you very much. Right, so let's go load our platform. So I've got the user guide that I'm going to cheat a little bit, and let's do the what it is first. So the platform's a central app for the contributors to track and manage their contributions, as well as for us as team members. And we can use it to actually recognize and to reward as well. So we used to have and still have got some scripts in random places. We've got stuff in triage ops. We've got a contributor success toolbox. We've got a merge request leaderboard that we put together for a hackathon some time ago. That's a little view app. All these bits and pieces scattered all over the place. And when we kind of thought long and hard about it, we realized and knew that we needed to bring everything together really to a sort of single source of truth, a single platform, with a bit of a data store behind it as well. There were things that we just couldn't do. Recognizing non-code contributions, for example, that's something we just couldn't do with the tools and scripts and platforms we had available. So we realized we needed to build something for ourselves. We wanted to stick to like GitLab tooling as much as possible. So we'll talk a bit more about the languages and the deployment strategies and other bits shortly. We did really want to try and make it a GitLab agnostic platform from a company point of view. So we hope that other companies using GitLab as a platform to host our open source project might be able to leverage this as well. But we haven't managed to do that because there's so many specifics around, the way that we use labels, the social platforms we use like Discord and the Discourse forum, etc. So that's something that at a later stage we'll be looking to see how others might be able to leverage the platform, and definitely looking at how we can bring the functionality into the product as much as possible as well. So as much as we've built this a little bit isolated so that we can move fast and we can deliver on our objectives, we do want to bring stuff back into the platform wherever possible. So yeah, let's whiz through it real quick. So the user guide is actually available. We'll talk about the technical how, but the user guide's available within the platform itself. I'm going to have it open in VS Code so I can actually move through the platform whilst reading it. It details and documents what our contributor levels are at the moment and what the rewards for reaching those levels are, and how many contribution points are received for each form of contribution that we currently recognize. And this we're looking to sort of add to as we move along. So I'll jump into the leaderboard to kind of go over those contribution formats that we currently recognize. So prior to this platform, all we really recognized were merge requests. And I believe I would say it was only really merge requests as well. Now we actually break down further to recognize, even opening a merge request as a sort of, you've started on that journey, and we want to recognize that. We recognize commits as well. So if you're collaborating with someone else on a merge request, you're not the author, we will actually recognize that as well. Merge requests, of course, and then sort of a bonus additional credits for merge requests which are linked to open issues. We're also going to recognize issues. So if you create an issue, that's a form of contribution. Notes, comments that you add to existing issues, merge requests, and there's a other lump that we're currently calling bonus points, which we'll flesh out further. But essentially, that's kind of activity on socials and things that aren't actually within GitLab, the platform. So if you're speaking at an event or you're holding a meetup or that kind of thing. So yeah, that's in the user guide here as well. And there's a form. So when you're on your profile within the platform, there's a form that contributors can kind of self-serve, let's say, to actually fill out when they're speaking or organizing an event. Um, and that will create an issue in a project that we've got where they can collaborate with us and other members of the community if they so wish. We're using GitLab SSO to sign in. So hit login, you'll see it pretty seamlessly authenticate with GitLab. The first leaderboard that we built out was for individuals. It defaults to the rolling past 3 months, but you can change the date span. You can even use this if you want to look at team members as well, and lots of bots. At the end, I'll touch on how we might decide to expand this to recognize and reward team members in the future as well. Initially, we're focusing on the community. We've got an organization leaderboard. So this pulls from the user's profile, the public profile. So there's no private or magic going on here that will kind of identify customers that don't want themselves to be identified. But we can kind of see, so good one, Kingland here. I know Patrick, one of our core team members. So yeah, we can break down and see all of the contributors from a single organization. The organization and organization. So this is the organization's leaderboard, and this is the organization leaderboard. Rewards, we can actually publicly see all of the community contributors that have been rewarded with credits for our reward store, which we recently got a nice new URL for, and I'm not allowed to access it, but you will be. So we've got our own little shop essentially, but you can't purchase anything. You can only use reward credits that you've received for contributions to redeem against some of that lovely swag, and to plant trees as well. So when you make your first contribution, you basically get 5 credits, which is only enough to plant a tree. So, you know, we don't end up sending loads of physical swag. We keep our green credentials there, but we also entice them to level up and get more credits. So you can see the recent hackathon that's just been wrapped up. So all the credits were rewarded via this. I won't go into these because they're confidential issues, but this is where we communicate with the contributor that they've received these credits and give them a link to the store, etc. The profile itself is just a breakdown of all the events that you've organized or spoken at, any bonus points you've received, merge requests, Discord messages, forum posts, etc. Rewards. So this is a breakdown of all the sections. I'm not going to drill into all the detail there. As an admin, so that's the contributor success team at the moment that are admins. We'll definitely look at whether other team members will be empowered on the platform going forwards, but we can also add bonus points. We've got these categories at the moment. Add points and some shortcuts. Yeah, great. So this isn't going to work for me as a team member, but as a community member. So for automations, we sometimes reference some of these shortcuts so they can follow that link after they've had an MR merge. They can follow that link and it will jump to the leaderboard. If I tick this, it will do it for me, and it will highlight them. It will go to the relevant page and highlight them so they can sort of maybe be gamified and enticed into, or what can I do to beat Marcel? What can I do to move up on that leaderboard? This to take you to your profile, so that will work for me. This one to go straight to the add event. So we've got documented in our handbook and some other places. If they're holding an event, a meetup, or organizing, then they can follow that directly. And then we've got a couple of links which appear in merge requests. So I think I've got one I prepared earlier. So when the bot says, thanks for raising this merge request. When you're ready for a review, click here. Um, we went from it being a command that you had to manually issue to a bot, which was challenging for community contributors, to a link which would automatically ask for a review. And now we've kind of gone a step further, and we've got a small UI, so you can make a few decisions now. If you need to re-request a review, that functionality wasn't really working at the moment, so that's possible now. If you want a review from a new MR coach, you can do that. Or if you explicitly want to ask for a review from someone, you can do that. And we default to assign GitLab Duo, so you get a Duo code review as well, which again was functionality that wasn't possible as a wider community member, because they can't assign reviewers to merge requests because they don't have permission. So that's a whirlwind tour. I think we've gone through all the front end. So I'll stop for breath for 2 seconds. Any questions or anything before I dive into the more technical side, I guess?
There are a few questions in the doc.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Let me open. I'm looking at the wrong doc clearly.
I think Daniel's perhaps answered most of those. But yeah.
The non-code contributions, I think we got the answer to that.
I think
Right, so you
I'll
can't
answer.
find.
It was a dumb user error, which I'm really good at being a dumb user. I didn't uncheck the community contribution checkbox when searching for myself.
Although, why you're not Chad, you're C Willie, are you? Yeah, awesome. Good. And what? Yes, good job on finding that dark mode issue. So the dark mode got merged in by a community contributor just a few days ago. So I'm really happy to see it as a feature. But I literally saw that myself an hour or two ago when I unticked this for the first time. I saw the highlight. So we'll create a follow-up issue, and again we'll see if we can get a community contributor to maybe come up with a nice one for that.
I'll always pick a slightly broken dark mode over no dark mode.
Appreciate that. Good. Cool. I will keep a little eye on that doc. Start jumping into the technical side of things.
Please,
So
the company information that you showed, that's public, right? So everyone can see that. Is that correct? So these
we've got a nice I don't know what you call it, like public health announcement on the bottom of the page to reassure everyone that this is information that we take that's publicly available. It's not something that we're not checking their group memberships, or we're not using their customer information. If we look at any of these contributors, so Patrick, for example, right, we look at any of these contributors on their user profile, it says Kingland. So we're taking it from that public user profile.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're within the doc. README, we state so Ruby on Rails backend. I wanted to stick with what I knew the majority of GitLab engineers are familiar with: Postgres database and Vue.js, but we're using a single page application for the front end. The development environment, it actually runs in a dev container, and I want to try and demonstrate that super quickly. For those that aren't familiar, I think Raymond introduced me to dev containers. I've suffered, and I imagine many of you have, with the sort of different versions of Ruby on Rails and dependencies and other bits and pieces, and how it can be challenging when you jump in between, say, triage ops, and we've got our toolbox and maybe the GitLab monolith and various other projects. So the dev container allows
Today, I
us.
am refining the ethic to where we are prioritizing getting workspaces enabled for initially all of the non-GDK projects. So we're going to try to help there.
Awesome, awesome. So when you have a dev container configured for a project like this one, beauty is when you open it in VS Code, Chad, you can tell me in some future conversation whether this works as nicely or at all in RubyMine and other IDEs, but VS Code will prompt you and say there's a dev container, and literally clicking on this will build and reopen inside of that container, which is it's a Docker image, so you know that it's got all of the prerequisites. That's clearly not the right command.
Like, where's the Docker file for them, and then what registry are they published in? Because I didn't realize this. We should reuse these when we're rolling out the workspaces support for dev.
Yeah, so essentially what you've got, and again, VS Code does a really good job if you do something like add Docker file to workspace, it takes you through a nice UI to do it, but it essentially creates a .dev container folder and a dev container JSON that tells it like where to find if it's a Docker Compose or a single off the shelf. And then if we look at that Docker Compose, we can see for this project, there's a sort of web server container, a front end Vite or Vite, I can never remember what it is, and then a database container. And yeah, this one itself then uses a dev.docker file, which then tells it which version of Ruby to use.
It committed the dev container YAML and the Docker file to the repo, and then dev container just builds them on the fly based off of that. Awesome.
Exactly. So yeah, beauty is you open it up in VS Code, it fires up the container and takes you straight into the container, and then you don't have to worry too much about the dependencies. Obviously, you need some kind of container runtime, an IDE which supports it, and there's a small hoop to jump through to get Git working inside of the container. A couple of environment variables to configure, and then you're pretty much good to go. And I think, this is already running on localhost. So as soon as I open that container, give it a few minutes to boot, and then we're good to go. Anyone that's familiar with Ruby, nothing too magical, things work in the usual way. You can access the Rails console. We've created a nice seed script, as well as further down in this doc, there's instructions on how to dump the production database and import that into your development environment, which is what I've done here, which is why we've got some reasonably good and up-to-date data to work with. The OAuth app is required to do the login step. So rather than us kind of sharing our secret, you can just create your own user OAuth app to go through that process. Test using RSpec and NPM, or it's Vitest or VTest. Linting using Rubucop and ESLint. Skip over that bit. Commit messages is an interesting one. Maybe I'll debate that with someone at a later stage, but I've gone with the 3 types that we use to classify within the GitLab project. Well, in fact, the entire GitLab org, I believe we use these types for. But it's not that the casing is subtly different. So yeah, the casing is subtly different because we build the changelog automatically from it. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to go into release.
I think I misunderstood you. That this dev container is only for the actual repo itself. Like, you didn't create those for other repos that people contribute to. Like, GitLab
Yeah,
UI?
sorry, it's just for this. Although I know that I've seen in the past a community contributor either creating or has already created a dev container for like the GitLab project. We've got one for now, I can't remember what it is. The Meta project, which is another contributor success project that we use. So I'm maybe it's a bit of a fad, but since I've been introduced to them, I think that it's a bit of a no-brainer. So I use them for any new project that I spin up. So yeah, the changelog trailers are used to build the release notes or the changelog release notes using the out-of-the-box GitLab functionality. So we capitalized the first letter, unlike in the GitLab project, we've got some weird script that I think manipulates those change logs. But I use the free types to kind of align with what we do as an organization. And I'd love a better way of doing it, but I found that this is the API that the release or change log calls to generate this. And you can just put like a future version in there if you want to kind of preview. Okay, if I cut a release now, what's it going to have in it? And at the moment, as horrible as it is, I just kind of come in here, I replace the carriage returns, and then I can say, oh, okay, so I've got two small maintenance tweaks that if I made a deployment cut a release now, that's what would be included. So the deployments, we build a Docker container. There's a subtly different Docker file that's used. So that's our Docker file. So we're using the same Ruby version, but we don't need to include, we add on to there. I think we don't need like Node installing the Postgres client. So there's a subtle difference in the Docker file. There might be a cleverer way in future we can have a Docker file with an argument that's so we share the same one, but an argument tells it whether it's for the development environment or the production environment. That might be a nice improvement. And we're using Runway, which hopefully many are familiar with, an infrastructure tool that kind of manages those deployments and all of the infrastructure. We're not really using the staging environment at the moment. I'm waiting for Runway to support to kind of separate those. At the moment, it essentially will do a deployment to staging, and then if staging goes fine, then it will deploy immediately to production. We would love maybe more of a test environment that we can deploy ad hoc to that environment, and then when we're happy, we make the decision to promote the deployment to production. So we're massively leveraging scheduled pipelines for automation and to get data into the platform. So if I go to pipeline schedules, please don't cry. We've got all of these, and I'll talk through again what we've got documented rather than the actual schedules themselves. So I'll talk about the materialized views. First thing as it's in here, we hit a bottleneck after we had built a certain amount of the platform. So because of the effort and the GraphQL and whatever, and I've got all of the tables that need to be queried to get all the information on the notes and the Discord messages and the forum posts and the issues. And this leaderboard was getting a bit slow. It needed to pull all of the data to do the calculations to determine the score before it could then order the leaderboard and then present just a single page. So we've actually created a couple of materialized views that kind of do all of those calculations and store it in an aggregated and summarized form, which hugely improved the performance. But we've split that into one that's got all activity and one that's got just activity from the last 90 days, because it takes 10 seconds to rebuild the full view, And I think it's maybe 1 second to do the last 90 days. So we want this leaderboard to be as up to date as possible, as close to real time as we can get, especially when we're going to start using this for hackathons. So yeah, we run every 5 minutes a process which will refresh the view. So that 10 seconds was hammering the server a little bit, is a bit intensive. So that's why we split out to 2 views. So the probably the most important, the biggest, the main service and scheduled pipeline is the grab data. And that's using GraphQL to query GitLab to get issue and merge request data, along with the users that are attached to those, the commits that are attached, the notes that are attached, etc. And as I say, every 5 minutes, we're pulling that data in. We then have a user update service, which is essentially to ensure that if anyone makes any changes to their user account, that they're reflected in the platform. But more importantly, it's to remove data from banned users. So if we get a spammer come on, create a few issues and merge requests, they will appear in the platform almost immediately. If we didn't have this user update service, when that data vanished from GitLab, we wouldn't know in the contributor platform that that information had vanished. So the user update service allows us to identify users that have been blocked and banned, and we subsequently then delete the data from the platform so we don't end up with spam in here. We've then got a grab team member service very recently introduced, which pulls data from the reviewer roulette platform. And that was needed in order to build the magic that I showed you a moment ago. So when you request a review to pull a coach, we needed the list of merge request coaches and the information on whether or not they're available. And that's all pulled from reviewer roulette. So we import that data frequently into the platform via scheduled pipeline, and then community members we're pulling in as well. We've got this group where we maintain a list of, I try and be careful of calling them this, but let's refer to them as this for a moment, approved community members. So they've kind of started the onboarding process, and we've just done that basic level of validation that they don't look like a bot or a spammer. So we pull that in, and we're using a webhook in the community members project to trigger a pipeline in the contributor platform that will, every time a new user is approved, then we'll re-import that data.
Isn't this a lot of data to import? Like you're making a GraphQL call to fetch all like merge requests and issues.
Yeah,
A bunch of
it
things on
is.
every pipeline. So
Yeah, and we've optimized and refined a little bit. So what we did when we first launched the platform, I think we were importing GitLab data every 2 hours. And we said, give us all the data for all merge requests and all issues which have been updated today. And what would happen is when that started running, so the first run at 2 a.m. would be quite quick because there wasn't much data from that being updated today. But then by 10 p.m., there was quite a lot of data. So it was taking, 25 minutes to run that process. We wanted to do it more frequently. So that was clearly not going to work if we wanted to, say, run the process every 5 minutes. And it took 25 minutes to run that process. So we've kind of refined it now. So we pull every 5 minutes, but we only pull data for like the last 15 minutes. So we only say, give us all merge requests or all issues that have been updated in the last 15 minutes. And that just allows a little bit of overlap or failure. If a pipeline fails or gets delayed, then we ensure that we pull data from a few pipelines, scheduled pipelines ago. but it runs. Again, I'd love to going forwards improve this. I'm in the wrong project. I'd love to have a better way of getting this data out. But at the same time, I would also like to keep it so that whatever technique we use, any other individual or organization can use if they wanted to leverage a platform like this themselves. So the incremental data import that you can see that runs every 5 minutes. Now I'm going to probably eat my own words, but I hope. Oh, we actually have got an interesting backlog there. But fortunately, we're using resource groups to ensure that it doesn't try and it won't try and run that same scheduled pipeline multiple times. So whilst they're in queued, it won't try and run them all at the same time. So I'm just going to kill a few of the backlogged ones. So as long as this one runs, we're all good. But looking at the last one that ran, yeah, interesting. It is taking a little bit longer today. So 2 minutes here. This is what it is normally. It's normally around about a minute and a half. But yeah, love any ways that we can maybe optimize that more in the future.
I mean, I wonder whether there's a different place to go to get this data, like Snowflake, but I don't think Snowflake is refreshed as frequently.
No, it's not. And again, the other concern and challenge is I know we're sort of doing it in certain places, like pulling data from Roulette, but secondhand information, if that makes sense. Like if we can get something from the horse's mouth, I guess I'd rather do that. But I do appreciate there are some sort of challenges with that. So yeah, I'd love to find a better way going forwards.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of GitLab data, there's a service that pulls data from the forum using the Discourse REST API and a service that pulls data from Discord. This is probably every couple of hours or so. It's not quite so frequent. Again, using the REST API.
How do you link their GitLab user IDs with the Discord user IDs? Like, do you have a mapping?
So unfortunately, we rely on them at the moment. We had a recent UX study for contributors, and this is a little bit of a pain point. So we're going to try and see if we can improve it a little bit. But we rely on them having linked their accounts like the same way you would add your LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever else handles into your profile. But yeah, as I say, we're definitely looking at a way that we can do that better. When they onboard, so if I just pull a random onboarding issue, we do encourage them to come and say hello in Discord, and we link them and sort of ask them if they can fill their Discord ID out in their GitLab profile. But we're definitely aware that we don't have, not everyone is linked essentially. So it's a room for improvement there. With the forum, it's funnily enough, it's the opposite way around. So on the GitLab forum, now I'm going to probably not find where the information lives. Somewhere in profile. You have your GitLab username. So yeah, it's kind of the opposite way around. The forum has your GitLab username, whereas GitLab has your Discord ID. So that's what we're relying on at the moment. So one of the things we were conscious of is that there is X amount of static content that we're going to want eventually in the contributor platform, and we don't really want to have a barrier, let's say, for people to get static content into this platform. So we've built an engine which actually renders Markdown within the platform. So there's kind of like a docs area, and this user guide, I think I looked at it in here earlier on, is just Markdown. But our View app actually fetches that Markdown document and then renders the Markdown as HTML. There's a few other, like even the README that you can hit through the platform if you want. So that's quite nice, and we'll leverage that a bit more going forward if we decide to move some of the contributor documentation like out of the handbook and out of the docs website and GitLab platform itself and into this platform. And there's some magic that goes on with the renderer to make sure that links open in new windows, and if there's any internal links, that was one, but I can't remember where it is. Maybe if there's any internal links, it just fixes them to make sure that those links work in the right way. So jump to docs, where were we? Static content, yeah. So the platform connects to, so the Postgres database is hosted in Cloud SQL Cloud, Google Cloud, whatever it is. And the production environment itself uses Cloud SQL proxy to connect to the database. And we can use that ourselves if we need or want to locally as well. So if we need to like troubleshoot or run a rake task or look at any of the production data, we can do that. This is also needed and required to dump the production database if you want to restore that locally.
Do you work with Infra to manage this, or do you have your own runbooks, or like is this running on our hardware and the sandbox?
Yeah, so we actually built this before Runway supported Cloud SQL, and the support I think is I think it's about 80% there so far. So it does run in like normal GCP, but we kind of manage the SQL instance at the moment. I think as soon as the support is brought up to what I would maybe call like GA, we might sort of move that across so it is fully managed and maintained by infrastructure. We do want to introduce Redis at some point in the future. And that's a sort of similar conversation, I think, around about, I don't believe that Redis is currently sort of supported as part of Runway, but we would love to not have to spin that up and manage that ourselves. So I'll connect with the team to understand if and what and where a bit further down the line. There's a couple of more notes that I didn't mention. So we're running like the latest version of Ruby, whether that's a good or a bad idea. Same with Rails. We use Renovate to ensure that we keep all of the dependencies up to date. We're using Vue-free and the composition API. And we deliver the Vue app via Rails. I had a few conversations with a few of you potentially before we kind of made that decision to try and understand what the best solution would be, you know, whether we actually build and deploy the Vue app via GitLab Pages or something completely standalone. But at the moment, it's actually built and served from the Rails app. So we have a route, essentially a kind of catch-all route in the Rails app that routes almost all traffic to the SPA, and then the routes within the Vue app determine where in the Vue app or which Vue components to mount. Leveraging RubyCop as much as possible, ESLint, and trying to apply as many kind of best practices as we can. But having not had many engineers involved in the project, like I'm conscious and aware that there's definitely room for improvement there. So if anyone's interested in this project as just like diving into something different for a change, whether it be for code reviews or to helping us implement some best practices to fix tech debt, whatever it might be, I would love that. Did I mention any other? So we've got about 50 issues in our backlog at the moment, I think. And with the latest hackathon, I went through and fleshed out some as quick wins and put implementation guides. We're trying to get better at using the standard labels for front end, back end. Yeah, type we've not done a great job of adding, so I need to do a bit more on that and also figure out why the bot isn't complaining, because I thought that triage ops would nudge us if we didn't add the type label to that. So, and as you can imagine, yeah, we want to do tons with the platform going forwards. One that's definitely at the top of my list, and I've got an old albeit but draft MR up, is to bring the finding issues process over to the platform. So at the moment, we have in contributors onboarding issues, we have some links to quick wins. But I would love a UI to be able to find an issue, and that could maybe even consider the contributors past. So if they've got past merged MRs, we could look, were they front end, were they back end, were they Ruby, were they Python, etc. And we could consider some of that information. We've also got the sort of bonus points that we're allocating to certain issues, so we could highlight those. There's issues that we highlight for co-create, so we could do that. And managing issues and merge requests as well, the ability for community members to add labels, introduce a bit of AI so they can ask to help them build an implementation plan or write tests, those kind of things. I'm just gonna have a quick look at the doc. Looks like you've already answered all the questions in there, I think. So yeah, any questions? I think that's
Yeah.
probably gone into far too much detail already.
No, this is great, Lee. Thank you so much for going through the details of the contributor platform. I think many of us, at least I have seen this for the first time. So thank you so much for showing us this and showing us what the contributor experience looks like and also diving into the platform. Are you looking for like reviewers or maintainers for this platform?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I haven't been proactive about doing so. I've definitely called on a few of you in the past. At the moment, it's pretty much like me, Raymond, and Ross on my team. And then when I've not been entirely comfortable, or if we've been making a decision around an implementation detail for Vue or something, I've definitely kind of lent on a maintainer from the main GitLab monolith. But yeah, definitely, if anyone is sort of excited about this and would be interested, tap us up and we'll figure out a process for it going forwards, because like Roulette doesn't currently, or I'm fairly confident it doesn't. It's not on here. Yeah, so yeah, that would be awesome. And yeah, to have a bit more steer on best practices and leverage other people's knowledge would be awesome. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lee. And thank you everyone for joining. I hope you found this useful. And have a good one.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, this
See
was
you all
really
soon.
awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks
Lee.
a
Thanks,
lot.
everyone.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye bye.